just demon stuff, devil stuff, stuff that was out to get me. And it was so scary. It was creatures that I had never even seen before that was just out to get me. Hi, my name is Edith, and this is my testimony. I grew up in Mexico, Guadalajara, and when I was about 5 or 6, we were already living at our own house. My grandpa actually passed away, and they gave the news to my mom, and my mom went over to see him. When she arrived there was other people there already, and my grandpa was in his room, and everybody else was in the outside hall of my grandpa's room, and they were praying and talking and just mourning. And me and my sister, which I have a twin sister, went into, we asked permission of my mom if we can go into my grandpa and see him, my grandpa's room. And she said, yes, go ahead. So we went in there, and I remember walking in there and just seeing him there laying down. Just kind of seemed like he was there but wasn't there anymore. And we were in there looking, and this little girl in our age walked into the room, and she was dressed in a white dress. And she looked at us and greeted us, and she said hi. And she said, you guys should pray for him. And I said, oh, okay, but I don't know how to pray. And she mentioned something that until this day I don't understand what it was. It sounded kind of like, to me right now, thinking back, remembering, it kind of sounded something like Torah, I don't know, some around those lines. And I said, okay. So I turned to my sister and I said, let's pray for him. Forward years later, when I'm an adult, my mom and my sister and me were together. And I said, hey, Mom, do you remember that one time when my great-grandpa died and we went to go see him and we asked if we could go in the room and you said yes? She said, yeah. I said, okay, well, there was adults out there. Who was the little girl that was there? And she said, there was nobody with kids there except for me. And I said, no, there was a little girl. Remember Estrés? And she said, my sister, she said, yes, there was a little girl there. She was dressed in a white dress. I said, yeah, she was. And she told us to pray for my grandpa. So thinking back now, I'm wondering who she was, because I thought she was a family member, somebody there who had went to see him. From the adults that were out there, when you're a kid, you don't really pay attention to all the stuff that's going on, especially if it's, the adults there. Even though we knew the whole town, we do have extended families who are from the cities who we don't know that might have came to visit. So she said, no, there was nobody there with kids. And she started naming all the people that were there, this person, this person, this person, this person, and none of them have kids. And I said, but she was there. And my sister said, yeah, she was there. And so thinking back now, after speaking to my mom in all these years, thinking that there was another little girl there that told us to pray for him, I'm thinking that was probably an angel telling us to pray, because there was a little girl there and there was really nobody that had kids there. And thinking back in my childhood, I also would see other things that I knew were not of this world.
Would you say that evil spirits have tried to discourage you from coming to Christ by instilling fear or anything?
Yes, that's one of the things. That when I was like 10 years old and we weren't going to church, we were kind of just working and going to school and just trying to live, I got the bright idea of, hey, I'm going to pray every night before I go to bed. And so I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
It just came from nowhere to
from
just
nowhere,
pray?
Yep.
Okay.
From nowhere. I'm going to pray. Before I go to bed, I'm going to pray. And so...
You think maybe that was like God was reaching out to you then or something like that? Okay.
I think so, because we had stopped going to church. At least in Mexico, we had like our... every festivity evolved around the church. School graduations... we didn't have Bible study or somebody explaining to us, but it was tradition.
There was a
and
tradition
faith.
of faith,
Yes.
yeah, that oozed throughout the community.
Yes.
And so even though you may not have had Bible study, it was, the church is there and you knew a certain way of living was expected. Okay.
People would pray. I mean, they would do the rosary. They would, when somebody passed away, it was like 9 days of praying for them.
Okay.
So kids graduated from school, they would have a celebration at the church. They would have mass, and then they would have the celebration afterwards. We had our patriotic festivities also included mass, and then a party afterwards. So Christmas time was really, really neat because we would do the celebration of Jesus' birth, but the way we would celebrate it over there is we would do a gathering where we would do, I'm not sure what it's called in English because we would do that in Spanish.
What do you call it in Spanish?
It was posadas.
Okay.
Posadas. So we would gather and we would have coordinated houses where we would go to, and we would walk to those houses. Now remember that the houses over there were far apart, so we would walk to somebody's house, and on the road we would sing traditional church songs, and we would get to the house and say, can we stay here, kind of like Jesus traveling up to Jerusalem when she was pregnant, and that was the whole point. And the person would give us lodge in there. They would say, yes, come on in. And we would go in and they would give us whatever they had. I mean, they would give us a drink, a warm drink, a snack. Some people would prepare a meal if they had the means to prepare a meal, or they would have cookies and coffee, or tea, or atole, which was like a thick drink that we prepare. But before then, during the day, we would have the mass, of course, and we would have the whole town would gather around and we would play family-friendly games. And we'd have piñatas, so we would have la loteria, which is kind of like bingo, and just other festivities. We would have music. And so in the evening, when it started getting dark, then we would walk to do the posada, to go to people's homes, and they would receive us. But the whole point of it was either praying along the way. We would pray until we got to the house and sing songs.
So you think maybe that was one of the things that might have encouraged you to start praying when you were 10, and what happened after that?
Yeah, because once we came out here, there was none of that.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. It was no church, no festivities. The only time we would actually go to church if it was a wedding or a baptism or something like that. So I think that was God's way of kind of trying to bring me back to Him.
And what happened what do you think the evil spirits were trying to do then?
So that's kind of hard to remember, because this was, I said, okay, I'm going to pray.
When you say hard to remember, you mean you can't remember it? Or?
No, it was a difficult time.
Okay.
Because that was one of those moments where my choices could have been this or that.
Wait a minute, I want to make sure I understand. You say it was hard. Does that mean you can't remember it, or it means that the memory is difficult for you to talk about?
It's difficult to talk about.
Okay.
Because it was, during that time I could have picked this or I could have picked that. And I think I made the wrong choice. So I started praying every night. I would pray, go to bed and pray, go to bed and pray. After a little bit, it wasn't even that long, must have been maybe about 3 days of praying and going to bed, I started having some terrible nightmares. Some nightmares that are like coming from the worst horror movie you can imagine. Just demon stuff, devil stuff, stuff that was out to get me. And it was so scary. It was creatures that I had never even seen before. That was just out to get me. It was nightmares. It got to the point where, and I would go to bed and pray and have my nightmares. And it got to the point where I didn't want to go to sleep. I dreaded night. And I was like, oh no, I know what's about to happen. I don't want to go to sleep. I wanted to stay awake. I tried staying awake, but I had to go to sleep and, got sleepy and had to go to school the next day. I wasn't getting enough sleep. Come nighttime, I would pray, and all these nightmares would come. And I was so scared, so scared. It was terrible. It was the worst nightmares that I could imagine. And one day I said, why am I having all these nightmares? I don't want to go to sleep. I don't want nightfall to come. Why am I having all these nightmares? What am I doing? Because when you're little, they tell you, if you misbehave, the devil's going to come and get you, or the devil's going to be here. And I said, what did I do? What did I do? Why am I having all these nightmares? I said, I haven't been going to school, been doing my homework, and I haven't been doing anything bad, like, what is different? What is different from when I was having my nightmares and I wasn't, having nightmares then, and now I'm having them now? What is different? And I said, oh, I started praying. That's what's different. Okay, well, I don't want to have those nightmares, so I'm going to stop praying. And I stopped praying.
How did that affect you going into your teenage years?
So going into my teenage years was very, very difficult because not having a faith community or somebody who can talk to me and tell me, hey, this is things that are difficult, but even reading Bible stories kind of tells you how things get difficult, but you can lean on God and you can find ways to resolve certain issues. I didn't have that, so when I became a teenager, I thought about, because I also had some hardships in Mexico, just my father not being around. Also, when he was around, it was kind of a difficult situation because he was, it's a difficult marriage and difficult father.
Yeah.
So thinking back, and when you're a teenager and you're processing all of who you are and just trying to figure out life, those kind of things kind of creep up, and you start realizing how your life is and how life should be, and how other people's lives is, and you just kind of want something better. And it was very difficult, and not having faith and community and just learning about how, because the Bible teaches us a lot about how throughout the Bible there was times where it was hard for people, but they leaned on God, or how they became delivered from those difficult times. I didn't have that, so I kind of became rebellious, went out partying, stopped caring about school. Before that, I was a straight A and B student. But during those times, I kind of fell out of caring about school and just living a good life. I was rebellious, would party. My mom was working most of the time, so I would just go wherever I wanted to. Just hanging out with the wrong crowd, making bad choices.
How did you dress?
I dressed in like gothic style, black clothing, dark makeup. Those were my teenage years, and just being rebellious. I also witnessed other people who were a lot more rebellious than me. Some that were not so rebellious, with just the style, just I met some good friends and some friends who were not so good to be around. I started doubting whether there was a God, whether religion was just something for people to believe and have hope. And I remember I was in high school, and there was a kid who would go there, and he would carry his cross, and we definitely knew he was a Christian. And when he would pass by our group where we used to hang out, he was kind of afraid, and he would start praying as he was walking by us. And
well, he was afraid of you guys?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He was afraid, and we would make fun of him and just kind of taunt him, and he would just pass by without looking and praying. And that's something that I wish I could change, but we did do that.
Is it because like you just didn't understand and you hadn't been taught what the faith was at that time?
I think so. I think it was because we had fallen off of the road of being in a church and just being a believer. And once, I was a teenager, I started thinking of what life really is, and started doubting that there was a God and all of that stuff. And it was just, I didn't think it was real, maybe, even though deep in me, I believed that there was a God. But it was just time of doubt.
You think some of the things that you had experienced overall contributed to that doubt?
Yes. Some of the painful stuff that happened in my life, and all of those things kind of made me kind of doubt that there was a God.
I think one of the questions that people oftentimes ask is, if there's a God, why does bad things happen? Because people believe that God should only allow good things to happen. Was that kind of what your thought process was? Yeah.
How can I have such a hard time, and how is there a God that allows all these things?
Okay.
So that was a difficult time in my life.
And how long did your rebellion last? And what was it that caused you to kind of change and come out of that?
When I was 18, I started looking into my life in a different way, because I figured, started thinking, what am I doing? Where is my life leading to? If I keep doing this, am I going to do this my whole life? Pretty soon I'm going to be out of high school, and I'm going to have to get a job. And even though I had worked here and there, I started working at a very young age. But even when I came to the United States, I would work at jobs. But just being out of high school is kind of different, because you start thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be an adult. Where's my life leading? Am I just going to be partying? I'm going to be dependent on my mom, who's already having a really hard time working. I need to do something. This isn't how I want to live the rest of my life. So I decided to stop partying, start studying. My friends kept calling me, hey, let's go out. No, I don't want to. But that was a difficult thing to do. But it was something that I decided to do. So I started studying. I caught up all my schoolwork that I was behind on.
Talk a little bit about what led you to join the Army.
So I basically joined the Army so that they could pay for my college. And being that growing up in Mexico and all of that stuff, I wanted to work somewhere outdoors rather than indoors, because I just enjoy the outdoors, and that would offer some jobs that could do that.
When did you feel Christ began to be a big part of your life, or your life began to change in a positive direction away from the partying, the military, and all those hardships and everything that you faced?
So that wasn't until I was in the military, and I had deployed a couple times. And during one of those times that I was back home, and they had moved me to where my husband was, my mom actually came to stay with us to help us with our son, because we had our son. He was little still. My mom decided to go to the church on post. And she said, come with me, because she really didn't want to drive places she didn't know. So I said, okay, I'll go with you. And so that kind of brought me back to when I was little and we would go to church together, and it just kind of felt the same way, that God really was present, and he was there, and he did exist. And that kind of started me off to back on the path. My mom wanted to go to church and I wanted to go with her. And once I was there, I just started experiencing that closeness, that God really is there. Then my husband began going to church as well. And just I had questions about God and just Jesus and the Bible. And there was actually my husband had gotten baptized, and I had gone out, left the military. I finished my term, and my husband was still in, so he got stationed somewhere else, and we went together. The whole family went down there. And in this place where we were, which was in California, he was off at work, and there was these ladies that were some Jehovah Witness ladies that came to our door, asking us if we knew Jesus and if we knew about God and the Bible. And I said, well, kind of, but, and then, oh, we can teach you, we can show you some stuff. And I said, oh, well, okay. So we let them in, and they were reading us passages from the Bible. And I remember I had this question. I said, so one of the things that I don't understand is, because I had never had Bible study, which is go to church and just, worship. I said, so if I don't understand how they say Jesus is God, but he's the Son of God, is he really, how is that? Is he God, or is he just the Son of God? And she said, oh no, that's the Son of God. That's not God. I said, oh. So my husband came home, and I said, hey, the Jehovah Witnesses people came, and they were teaching us about the Bible, and I had some questions, and I asked this question, and they said that Jesus is not God. He's just Jesus. He's the Son of God. And my husband said, no, Jesus is God. It's a Trinity. So he explained it to me, and I said, oh, okay, well then they're not teaching me the right stuff. And not what we believe, because that's not what my husband had explained. And, my faith believed in the Trinity. So I said, okay, well, that makes sense. And my husband said, I'll teach you. We'll read the Bible together, and if you have any questions, just ask me. And I said, okay. So yeah, they weren't coming anymore, and my husband was walking me in my path to learning about God. And there was a community center that he spoke to the people there if they could let him use a church there, or the community center. And he began a ministry there. He started teaching. He started a church, and we talked to all of the people around the neighborhood. We would make flyers and go pass them out to have people invited to the church. My son at the time was about 7 years old, 7 years old, and he would run around the neighborhood and get all his friends and to come to church. And so at first, when he started the church and started attending there, it was a church full of kids. It was all kids in there. And so he had to kind of modify what he was going to teach to teach the kids there. And he said, one day after church, he said, why is there a whole bunch of kids? Only kids come. said, maybe God wants you to teach kids. And eventually, the kids started bringing their parents to the church. And the church started getting curious why their kids, every time it was a small community, it was a closed community. The parents started wondering why all these kids went to church on Sunday morning. every Sunday, all the kids in the neighborhood would come to church. And so the parents, one by one, started coming in. And before we knew it, we had a full church.
And at this time, did you have any responsibilities in the church? What did you do?
Yeah, at the time, I started, since we started getting all the adults coming in, then I would do a small Bible study for the kids from the stuff that he had taught me, because since we started with the learning at home, I had gained quite a bit of knowledge on the Bible, and so I started teaching the little kids, and we would have a little study with learning from the Bible and also making it fun for them. So they really liked it.
Do you think your time as a teacher's assistant helped you work with kids?
Yeah, that really helped, because having worked there, and also when I finished, when I exited the Army, one of the things that I began doing was getting my certification to do child care. So I was doing child care at home. So I was actually had a program at home where I would actually watch the kids, but it was structured to where they were also learning things, and it was a routine and schedules and all of that stuff. So most of my jobs was working with kids, besides the department store in the Army.
And after your time, after you guys were had the church previously and all that, what happened next?
So after we had the church, my husband got orders to move to another state. So we left, and being over there, we started looking for a church to attend. And since he had started right around the time when we left, he started, because the church that we had at first was a Protestant church, because he had pretty much from where he came from, his family and everything, they were all Protestants, or part of the Reformed Church. But towards the end, before he got his orders to move to another state, because of the military, he started looking into where does the church come from? Why is there a lot of different religions in the world? Why is it? How did that come about? So he started going deep into searching for all of that stuff, and he ended up with looking into the early Christian church. I began also looking into who God is, and having studied the Bible and what Jesus did for us, because back then you kind of know what happened, but you don't really connect it and you don't think about it. But knowing all those things just kind of made me think of the great things that Jesus did for us and how much he suffered, and that's just, it kind of made me want to fix my life to where I'm not sinning because all of the things he did for us, and I'm still sinning. That just felt some kind of way. It was something that I didn't want to do, and I also wanted to have a relationship with God, and I began praying, and one of the things that really kind of helped me was looking into the lives of saints and how they live, and that's very humbling, very, very humbling, because you see how they make sacrifices for Christ and how they live their lives, and how a lot of the times they're accused of many things, and instead of being grudgeful and fighting and all of those things, they're just don't say anything and just take the blame. And that's just kind of like, wow, they they truly live a life and have a relationship with God, because they do it all because they love God, and they pray, and even like religious orders like the nuns, the monks, and all of those things, and how they have that close relationship with God, and just looking into the miracles that God does through them, and God works through different people, and realizing all those things is like, I want to have that, I want to have a relationship with God. When I leave this world, I want to be with God. I don't want to be anywhere else but there. You start, after you start praying and going to church, and trying to change your life around, I began feeling like a relationship with God, how it's different, how you feel loved by God, how now I feel whole and not like I'm missing something. Because before, I felt like there was something missing in my life. It was an emptiness that I can't really describe. And after going to church and just learning about God, and praying, and getting on that journey to just spend time with God in prayer, and going to church and experiencing all those things, it just kind of fills you up. There's no longer an empty something in there.
Which saint do you feel the most drawn to?
So I feel the most drawn to Father Pio, because in learning about his life and how he was just attacked so much, but he remained strong and humble, and just kept loving God, and he suffered the wounds of Jesus, and he was accused of things, and just had such a hard life, and he still kept the faith, and he did so many miracles and so many things while he was alive. He converted so many people. He saved a lot of souls. So that's a saint that I'm drawn to. It just kind of his life and how he had a hard life. One of the things that when I was little, I used to be scared because I used to see things. And I've heard people say that people have the gift of seeing spirits.
There may be a young person somewhere who might be experiencing something like that. Maybe they'll come across this video or something. What would you tell them? If you can tell them something, what would it be?
I would say, if that is something that is happening to you or something similar, keep praying, stay with God. God will deliver you. Reach out to people. That's something that I didn't know to do, to ask for help. I could have talked to my mom. I could have talked to a family member. I could have told my mom, hey, take me to church because this is what's happening. But being a kid, you don't really think about those things. So I wish somebody would have, guided me and said, hey, keep praying. I'm going to pray for you. Get somebody else to pray for you. Talk to somebody who can help you out. Because I think if I would have reached out to somebody, I would have kept praying. There would have been steps that would have helped me go through that and defeat that. Because if you choose to go through that and come out of it and defeat it, because God is not going to give you something that you can't handle. So if you come out of that, you will be so blessed.
What would you say for somebody who might be in a rebellious state or something like that, or experiencing hardship during their teen years, being that you've been through some very difficult things?
I would say go talk to somebody, but not just somebody, because I talked to counselors. At school they had counseling, but they kind of, I'm not saying that's not a good thing, it is, but for these kind of situations, you want to talk to somebody in the faith. Go talk to a priest. Go talk to somebody who is in the faith that can guide you and can kind of help you develop that relationship with God, because in my experience, having that emptiness, no matter how much counseling I went to, how much things I tried to do in my life to feel better, nothing helped until I began a close relationship with God. So look for somebody who can help you in your walk with getting to know God better.
Is it safe to say that with the counselors, it's a more business-like feel, but for somebody that's a clergyman or something like that, it's more personal, being that they're trying to bring the love of God to that person?
Definitely, because a counselor is going to give you strategies, it's going to give you ways on how to deal with your problem, but I'm not saying they don't care, but it's not personal, it's not something that they're trying to love you through it, because somebody who has the love of Christ and also loves their brothers and sisters, they're caring for you as a whole, not just giving you strategies and caring because you're a hurting person. They're caring because you're their brothers and sisters in Christ. So it is a more personal way of caring for you and helping you out that also shares that love of God, and you can feel that love through those people in the church that are helping you, as opposed to somebody who's just a counselor.
So at this point in your life, do you still feel like you're occasionally attacked by evil spirits? And if so, what is your strategy to overcome them as a mature believer at this point?
Yeah, so funny thing was when I started coming back to the church and started learning about the Bible and learning about God and looking into the saints and all of that stuff. As a matter of fact, when I was in, this was when I was like in California, when the Jehovah Witness people came and my husband started teaching me, and I would go to the nearby church mission, because my mom has always been going to the Catholic Church. I would help the mission over there, because they had a mission where they would send people out to evangelize. So I would help my mom, and would go with my mom to help the mission with food and just different things that they needed. And my mom was taking classes over there, but I would go with her when she would take them food and things like that. But when I started getting involved in all of that stuff and going back to the church and learning, and my husband started the church, and I started doing the Bible study, the nightmares came back. They sure did, because it worked once before, right? They discouraged me. But this time, I knew what was coming. So I said, nope, this time I have God with me. And so I remember having those nightmares, and I remember having the nightmare and the demons coming after me, and I said, I'm not scared. God is with me. God is with me. And I remember them coming at me, trying to get me, screaming and making all kinds of ugly noises in my dream. And I said, oh yeah, well, God is right behind me. So I began screaming at them with God behind me. And they got scared and went away. And from that moment on, my nightmares disappeared. I would say that hardships, we all have, most of us or a lot of us have hardships in our lives. But hardships kind of make us stronger in our lives and in our faith. Thinking about all my hardships when I joined the military, it gave me strength, because as opposed to my fellow soldiers that were there, the women that were there, who would cry at night and talk about how they wanted to go home and they hated it there, in my situation, I was grateful to be there because I didn't have 3 jobs to go to. I didn't have to worry about paying rent. I didn't have to worry about food. I got 3 meals a day, a roof over my head, and it's just it makes us stronger. Makes us stronger. And if we think about it, looking into the lives of saints and how they live their lives, and all the sacrifices they do, because they do a lot of sacrifices to save other souls, because God sees that as a sacrifice to help other people. We can think of our lives in hardships as a sacrifice so that we can help others. If we offer that as a sacrifice to the Lord, we can help others. So if you are out there having a hard time, just think that all those hard times can make us stronger if we believe in God and establish a relationship with God and go to church. We will be filled on the inside with love, and those hardships can in turn make us stronger and see the world in a different way. And we can offer those sacrifices for the saving of many souls.